I have been sitting on this idea and making this video for a while because I wanted to make something a little more like formal with pictures and everything. But since you brought it up, I figure why the fuck not? Let's just do it on the fly. This comment is attached to a video where I'm talking about who I believe is the most likely candidate for Melisandre to sacrifice in order to resurrect Jon Snow. We're operating under a couple of assumptions here. One, Jon, when killed, has warged into Ghost for his second life. And this is a precedent that's set with the Varamir's Six Skins prologue. And that's the entire reason that George gives us this prologue, is to set a precedent of what happens when a warg dies. So if Jon died and just stayed dead, his soul, which has gone into Ghost, over time completely merges with Ghost and becomes less man, more beast. So what we can assume is currently happening with Jon and Ghost is that their souls are mingling. And immediately there's two of them. But the longer that Jon stays dead, the more entwined his soul and Ghost's soul will become. Unfortunately, what I think this means for Ghost, at least his physical body, is when Melisandre performs a ritual to resurrect Jon, I believe with the sacrifice of Monster, who is actually Gilly's baby. When that happens and Jon's soul is called back to his physical body by the exchange of death for life, he's going to be too merged with Ghost to separate. And so what is now both him and Ghost is going to be pulled back into Jon's physical body. There won't be anything left of Ghost to animate him. There won't be a soul and energy within him, and so his physical body will die. But Ghost will live on, but he is going to live on in Jon. He's going to become Jon, and Jon is going to become him. And all of this is driven home by all the wolf's blood talk, the same way that dragon's blood is playing into Dany's story. Now, if this scenario plays out the way that I think it's going to, this is an amazingly beautiful inverted parallel to what is happening with Dany and Drogon in Dany's Birth of the Dragons and Forging of Lightbringer, as she is reborn as Azor Ahai. The first and probably most important inverted parallel that would be happening here is the theme of self-sacrifice and agency. Dany walks into the fire and makes this sacrifice willingly. Jon is murdered by his men. Second most important, maybe even first most important, is that Jon will be brought back by someone who is aware of and trying to force the Azor Ahai prophecy. And I think that Melisandre is going to do this operating under the assumption that Jon is Azor Ahai, whereas Daenerys organically fulfills the prophecy before she or we even know about it. So we have willing self-sacrifice versus being robbed of your agency and murdered. And then you have forced prophecy fulfillment versus organic prophecy fulfillment. So the organic prophecy fulfillment yielded the true Azor Ahai and Lightbringer. What is the inversion of that going to create? How is Jon going to feel both merged with Ghost and realizing that this baby that he forced Gilly to swap was murdered, sacrificed to bring him back? The baby swap has to come full circle in Jon's narrative, otherwise it is a completely wasted plot point. So let's get into some of the other really interesting subverted parallels that would be happening here. First, there is the influence of a witch and the sacrifice of an infant. And so in Dany's case, this is Mirri Maz Duur and her unborn child, Rhaego. And in Jon's case, this is Melisandre and Monster. Neither Rhaego or Monster are ordinary babies. Rhaego was a dragon baby, this embodiment of fire, and Monster was marked for the others, an embodiment of ice. So in Dany's story, you have a sacrifice of a baby of fire, and in Jon's story, you have a sacrifice of a baby of ice. And where Rhaego's sacrifice had unseen to Dany consequences in that Drogo was brought back equivalent to what an unborn dragon baby would give for life. With Jon, it's going to be whatever fucking consequences come along with sacrificing a baby that was meant for the others. So in both cases, these have very serious, unforeseen consequences for Jon and Dany. So in Dany's story, we have her walking forth into the pyre in a willing act of self-sacrifice. What was Daenerys Targaryen dies and becomes Drogon, and she is reborn as Azor Ahai. Meaning that Drogon and Dany's souls are one in Drogon. Strength of the woman went into the beast. In Jon's case, not only will it not be a willing exchange, it's going to be the strength of the animal going into the man. We had Dany willingly sacrificing herself to give Drogon life, and we have Ghost unwillingly, by himself and Jon, being sacrificed to bring Jon life. So it's just every step of the way, should this version of events prove to be correct with Jon, every step of the way has an inverted parallel with Dany. Meaning that Jon is the inverted Azor Ahai, the Night's King. However you want to conceptualize that. Darth Jon, Wolf Jon, the White Wolf. He's going to be a darker character. And he is going to be the counterpart to Daenerys in fire and ice because he is the ice. It's got nothing to do with his lineage and everything to do with his story arc and the themes that have to do with a lack of agency. A forced prophecy, starting with his father. Dany's story is about her making her own decisions and choices from the beginning. That is what we are seeing her come to do all through Game of Thrones. We see the opposite with Jon. Every decision that Jon makes, everything that happens to Jon is out of his hands, right? No one will tell him the truth about his parentage. Everyone let him go to the Wall and the Watch under extremely false fucking pretenses. So he makes this lifelong commitment without really knowing what it means. The only person that kind of tried to tell him was Benjen and Tyrion. Then he gets there and Sam conspires to make him Lord Commander. He didn't want that. That was something that was forced on him. Then he is murdered in a mutiny of his own fucking men. All of this is a trail of a lack of agency, of what happens when people don't have control over their own fucking decisions and where it leads them and the monsters that can be born of that. And when I talk about the equilibrium between fire and ice, it has everything to do with the relationship and how it goes down between Dany and Jon. Because remember, with the lore of the Maid of Light, Dany, and the Lion of the Night, Jon, their union created the God on earth and gave 10,000 years of prosperous golden years to humanity. That mythos is telling us that life flourishes when there is a union between these two primordial forces of life, fire and ice. Jon and Dany are the Maid of Light and the Lion of the Night. And the world will continue to lack equilibrium until their union, until there is harmony between them again.